Hi, I'm Vanessa and I love bad Star Trek. I will be the big fat lawsuit just waiting to happen that is season 2 of Star Trek's Next Generation. Today I'll be talking to you about an episode called Manhunt, an episode that decided that 2 episodes that didn't need a sequel should get one. The first being Haven, the one where Lwaxana Troy is introduced and where Deanna almost got arranged married until the guy caught a ride on a spaceship with a woman he'd been dreaming about since he was a child. And The Big Goodbye, a fun detective noir romp on the holodeck where Picard ended the episode by doing an impression of a cat and hawking up a hairball.
Ad klaxon ris blash blanarnik karnik.
One of the writers, Tracy Torme, who was aware of an arrangement on the show where Majel Barrett, Gene Roddenberry's wife, would appear as Lwaxana Troy once a year, thought that continuing the episode she first appeared on while incorporating noir elements would be the way to go. This is the same person whose script from the Royale had been rewritten into nonsense, and Torme makes the allegation that the same thing happened here, making this the last episode he worked on for Star Trek. What I'd really like to know is why they had Lwaxana Troy harassing the men on the Enterprise for the entire episode. This is an episode that seems to platform the idea that if you are in a position of power, that it's completely fine to sexually harass people while they're at a job that would be negatively affected by them standing up for themselves. And to have a woman be able to do this in the future is what men apparently believe the end product of feminism is. The sexist writing for women didn't even stop at Gene Roddenberry's own wife. Just to provide contrast here, Majel Barrett was slated to be the second in command on the original series, and even showed up on the pilot episode The Cage under Captain Christopher Pike. But according to NBC, the #1 character was dropped, reporting that it was women that negatively reacted to her character, as well as the NBC executives themselves. If it's not men holding the glass ceiling as low as possible to prevent women from advancing in any sort of substantial way, thanks to internalized misogyny, women will certainly pitch in to help stand on it and keep that glass ceiling firmly in place. And as much as I love Bones, Spock, and Kirk, the fact that the original series focuses on this trio of a boys' club is not to its advantage. #1 was a wonderful, no bullshit kind of character, and the only character I was extremely happy to see again on Discovery. So if Lwaxana Troy was someone that had to be on the show once a year, why not explore her motivations with her character? What is up with her lack of boundaries and using her position as the ambassador to corner people romantically? What if, instead of indulging her, she actually faced consequences for her actions? Say someone on the ship decided to report her to Starfleet headquarters, and she has a tribunal where her daughter has to testify. And after a lifetime of laughing off her behavior, she must reckon with the truth that her mother is a predator. And for the first time, Lwaxana Troy is forced to reflect on her actions. Or they could have completely reset her character. Haven sucked. And what is continuity to a certain degree? I mean, Klingons always looked like this, right? And explore what other ways she could abuse her power outside of harassing people. On top of it being offensive and damaging, I think it's unimaginative. What if daughter of the 5th house, holder of the sacred chalice of reeks, heir to the holy rings of Beta Z, were titles bestowed on her as the result of ruthless conquest on Beta Z within her lifetime, and getting on her bad side meant that you might wind up dead? You know who else in sci-fi dresses impeccably, is generally on the side of good, but rules with an iron fist? Just a warning here, I may snap because she is a queen, Chris Jen Avasarala from The Expanse. She is terrifying.
Their family will be ruined. Their mother, the children, their children, all of them pariahs, outlaws, hunted and on the run for the rest of their days until we find them and nail each and every last one to the wall.
None of that happens. The only thing that's mildly amusing is what happens at first when the Enterprise takes on a mission to deliver ambassadors to a conference and first pick up these Antedian dignitaries whose people are looking to eventually join the Federation. And when I say people, I mean that loosely because they're kind of like a reverse mermaid with fish heads and people bodies who go into like a self-induced coma during space flight and bring with them a bubbling crude of fish parts to gobble post awakening. Worf is like, wow, they're so hot.
What a handsome race.
And later, Wesley on the bridge is like, yeah, actually, they're kind of uggo.
They are rather strange looking, Commander.
And I guess that's what passes for a B plot in this episode. Wesley deciding whether or not the fish people are attractive. You'd think a Federation education would be heavier on teaching people how to recognize that beauty standards are not, pardon the pun, universal. And using beauty as a yardstick to determine another being's value at all is stupid. But this is early days, Next Generation, and so that's not gonna happen. One of the Antedians, oddly enough, is played by Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac. He was just like this fanboy that really wanted to be on the show, and he didn't really care that he was completely unrecognizable as a fish. And of course, guess who shows up unannounced? You know, just pulls up alongside the Enterprise using a shuttle. The one, the only, Lwaxana Troi. Yay. She coincidentally also needs to go to the conference as an ambassador to Beta Z. And while on the view screen, like not even on the ship yet, she hits on Picard in front of the entire bridge crew, including her own daughter.
Oh, Jean-Luc, what naughty thoughts. But how wonderful you still think of me like that.
Can you just imagine your mother showing up to your job and walking up to your boss and saying, hey, I know you want to do me, right in front of you, no less? Like, what the fuck? They wrote her to not even respect her own daughter. She continues doing this in the transporter room.
Oh, it will be pleasant to have her as a guest of the Enterprise again.
Oh, well, well, well. And you, Jean-Luc, I wasn't aware you had such handsome legs.
Okay, so she's telepathic. Let's just entertain the idea for a second that Lwaxana is right, that Picard is just itching to make love. Okay, that's maybe not the best way to phrase that. But anyway, let's say she's right. He's not saying it. He's like not giving voice to it for a good reason. He's like at work. How is pointing it out over and over at his workplace a respectful thing to do? Of course, Deanna, her daughter, regresses back to being a teenager and just sort of rolling her eyes at her behavior. After Picard leaves her in her quarters, she rattles off some opinions about him to her daughter. And here's where we get a really repugnant ass statement about dating.
I can't believe you, Mother. You sound like you're sizing up a commodity.
But that's exactly what men are, darling, especially human men.
But I don't think I'll ever learn to see men the way you do.
You will as you mature, darling.
I would appreciated it personally if she said it was like a specifically Betazoid thing to have this outlook, to have some sort of cultural compassion. But no, it's just that men are commodities, and that's just fine to say. When Picard runs into Wesley and Riker talking about Lwaxana's behavior on the bridge, Picard's like, hey, she's an ambassador. She deserves respect. Well, by being overtly sexually aggressive towards you at work, she's likely not really respectful of anyone. Not you, Picard, and certainly not even her own daughter. But haha, isn't she the most, to say the least? When Picard tells Riker to make sure that he's in formal dress for the ambassador's dinner later with Lwaxana Troi, Riker's like, hey, I actually don't remember being invited to that.
To which dinner was the captain referring, sir?
Nothing I've been invited to. Any of you?
And everybody else is like, yeah, me neither. Like, what's going on? And of course, this means that Picard's the only one invited in her quarters for dinner. Like, that's so goddamn creepy and ew. This is how like 95% of Lifetime movies start. And of course, Lurch, her butler, is back. And at this point, he's just a full-blown alcoholic. Considering who his boss is, I guess this makes perfect sense. Picard, being the consummate professional, somehow bobs and weaves her obvious amorous advances, which are both verbal and physical, as well as the fact that he has been tricked into going on a date with someone he's not interested in. Sidebar, the forks that they're eating with look so dangerous. Picard also does something kind of shitty and uses Data's habit of reading entire Wikipedia pages from his head when prompted about certain topic as a way to dissipate the weird vibe in the room and end the dinner.
By using the square root of pi and multiplying it by 9 to the third power, I was able to accurately calculate the distance between the Omicron system and the Crab Nebula.
Oh. Fascinating data. Absolutely fascinating.
If a woman was in a situation where she was coerced into a date she didn't want to be on and found herself in a room where she is outnumbered 2-1, it wouldn't be some silly situation for everyone to laugh at. Deanna later explains to Dr. Pulaski that Lwaxana is hungry for a mate because she's going through a thing called the phase where her sex drive quadruples.
Midlife, as in a human female's menopause?
Similar. It's only at midlife that a betazoid female becomes, well, fully sexual.
When Troi explains this to Pulaski, she's like, we should tell Picard, and Pulaski says something really weird in response to that.
No. As ship's doctor, I'd consider it an excellent exercise for his reflexes and agility.
And Deanna says something even weirder back.
An animal is always at its best when hunted.
Or when hunting.
They're deciding to withhold this information as a way to make Picard improve himself, even saying out loud that what she is doing is predatory, and still not warning him. No one confronts Lwaxana about her behavior, and there's no consequences for her actions. No nothing in response to using ambassadorial status to leverage an inappropriate meeting with someone who has to be at her disposal as part of his job. What the fuck is going on? Like, what was the point of that? And then decides to let Picard and Riker in on her condition.
A betazoid woman, when she goes through this phase, quadruples her sex drive.
Or more.
Or more. Never told me that.
I didn't want to frighten you. She has opted for the only...
I don't know if this is character breaking or not, and it's Jonathan Frakes grinning like an idiot, but Riker is cheesing out here. It was sort of like a funny and silly beat in what I think is an otherwise painful episode. And we get this ridiculous bit of exposition also, like, you can't confront her about her behavior or reject her because she'll take it very personally. So what? She's the one making things gross and uncomfortable. Oh, you mean telling you that what you're doing is wrong is something you might take personally? Then don't fucking do the thing. If you're under the impression that because this was pre-Me Too movement, that sexual harassment wasn't a thing recognized as a problem, in 1980, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission issued regulations defining sexual harassment and stating it was a form of sex discrimination prohibited by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Picard comes up with this bright idea of hiding in the holodeck for the rest of the trip, which is where we get the Dixon Hill detective noir 1940s thing. And that doesn't really go anywhere because Picard is confused and forgot stuff from the novels the program is based off of. So he spends time in there trying to remain in character and going, yeah, I totally did the thing that you said.
What can I do for you, Mr. Bender?
It's about Alva.
You'll have to be a little more precise.
Okay, you want to play stupid. That's Jake with me. A week ago, a man came in here. He wanted you to find his girlfriend. Name's Alva.
Just say you read the cliff notes. It's fine. They're holograms. They're not going to get upset. But what tickles me about this plan of his is that the trip takes 3 days. So he's supposed to just not be a captain for 3 days and fuck around being the forgetful detective. Personally, I think what they could have done is put Lwaxana in the holodeck with one of the Antedians, cover her in fish flakes, and let them have a consensually good time on the way to the conference. But no, Lwaxana finds her way onto the bridge looking for Picard, and when she doesn't find him, she grabs Riker, who is Deanna's ex-boyfriend, and announces to the bridge that her and Riker are getting married right in front of her daughter.
In a traditional Betazoid ceremony, your Commander Riker and I will be joined in the union of matrimony.
Riker is saved by the fishies when Pulaski announces that the Antedians are starting to wake up, and Riker is like, well, I better go get the captain now, and Lwaxana locates him using the computer. Majel Barrett is also the voice of the computer, so I think it's kind of funny that she's asking herself questions at this point.
Is Commander Riker still on the bridge?
Negative. Riker is currently in holodeck 3.
Picard is at some bar on the holodeck.
I'm as jumpy as Haircut Lipinski trying to land on a fraction.
And he introduces Riker as Nails from Chicago and Data as Carlos from South America, to his being clocked for being shiny on the Big Goodbye. And being South American somehow makes that makes sense. And the way they edited Lwaxana's entrance into the bar is really weird because the bartender comments on her before she even walks in the door.
Good God, what's that?
Does the bartender have x-ray vision? What is going on? Picard looks visibly pissed off that she broke into his clubhouse, and Lwaxana becomes fascinated with the bartender because he's a blank slate and she can't read his thoughts at all.
I get no thoughts from him at all, nothing. Well, I've never known a man so able to keep his true feelings completely hidden.
That's because...
No man has ever been such a mystery to me.
Does she not know what a holodeck is? That seems really unlikely. So for her to fall in love and propose to a hologram seems pretty dumb, even for her. Like, I get being turned on, but never so turned on that you can't tell the difference between the real Weird Al Yankovic and a cardboard cutout of Weird Al Yankovic and someone standing behind it giving him a voice. Especially not me. Never me. As they're about to beam down to the conference, finally, Lwaxana does something really unusual and says something important by telling the crew the Antedians are terrorists covered in explosives.
They're not delegates, those two are assassins. Oh, their robes are lined with ultratium, highly explosive, virtually undetectable by your transporter.
I'm seeing, like, one of the patterns of a bad Next Generation episode is when they try to scramble to create stakes at the very end. Like, this is literally at the 43-minute mark that this happens. After the Antedians are like, "This is outrageous. How dare you?"
That is an outrage. Lies.
They get hauled away to the brig. It's really not much of a thing. This episode is the epitome of pointless. Men being put in a position like this is not what feminism's goal is. Maybe there could be some way about exploring the anxiety about women's imminent equity. But making Lwaxana persistently hit on Picard and making it a joke, even if he's uncomfortable, is the kind of shit patriarchy pulls sometimes. Men are just expected to be sexual all the time, and their feelings about it, who cares, right? There are two types of sexual harassment according to the 1964 Equal Rights Act under the sexual harassment statute in Title VII, listed as quid pro quo, meaning that the sexual attention is requested in exchange for not being fired or reported, and a hostile work environment such as making sexual comments, spreading sexual rumors, and humiliating someone publicly. Lwaxana does both many times throughout this episode, and I am not laughing. I do not find Lwaxana Troi charming. I do not find abuse of power to sexually coerce someone fodder for comedy. I feel like we need to do a much better job of envisioning a future where men feel emotionally safe around coming forward when they feel unsafe. Make like a fish and just forget it. This is bad, and I am sorry that it exists. Like, subscribe, no pressure, but peer pressure. Till next time, I guess.